Ladies and gentlemen, you need to understand something that sounds almost impossible when you are the one sitting in the silence, staring at a phone that never lights up, replaying every moment, every laugh, every promise, every little spark that made you believe this could become real. You need to understand when an avoidant pulls away, it does not always mean you were forgettable. It does not always mean you were unworthy. It does not always mean they felt nothing. Sometimes the truth is far stranger and far more painful to accept. They can think about you more than they will ever admit, and yet still act like you don't exist, because for them, longing doesn't turn into closeness. It turns into logic. You see, an avoidant often lives in a world where feelings feel dangerous, not because feelings are bad, but because feelings ask for vulnerability, and vulnerability to them has a history. It has consequences. It has memories. It has the echo of times when needing someone led to disappointment, to rejection, to feeling trapped, to feeling like they lost themselves. So when they begin to feel something real for you, their mind doesn't celebrate it. Their mind tries to manage it. Their mind tries to control it. Their mind tries to shrink it down into something they can handle, something that doesn't require them to open up, something that doesn't require them to risk being seen. That is why their thoughts about you can be intense and still invisible. They think about you in quiet moments. They think about you when they're driving and a song comes on that reminds them of your voice. They think about you when they see something funny, and their first instinct is to send it to you. And then they don't. They think about you when they're lying in bed at night, when the day is over, when distractions are gone, when the world is silent enough for their feelings to rise. But instead of reaching for you, instead of letting those thoughts soften them, they often do what they have always done with emotion. They file it away. They swallow it. They talk themselves out of it. And this is the part you need to understand. They don't translate longing the way you do. You translate longing into connection, into conversation, into reassurance, into, I miss you, can we talk? They translate longing into strategy, into distance, into, if I don't engage, I won't get attached. They translate it into, if I keep space, I stay safe. They translate it into logic that sounds mature on the outside, but is often fear underneath. They tell themselves they're busy. They tell themselves it's not the right time. They tell themselves you're too emotional. They tell themselves it's moving too fast. They tell themselves it's not going anywhere anyway. And the wild part is, some of these thoughts can be true and still be used as armor. Because sometimes logic isn't wisdom. Sometimes logic is the excuse fear uses to stay in control. So when you look at their silence and you assume it means you were nothing, you're reading the situation through your language, not theirs. Your language says, if you care, you show it. Their language says, if you care, be careful. Your language says, if I miss you, I reach out. Their language says, if I miss you, I might lose myself, so I retreat. And I know how unfair that feels because you are the one left carrying the weight of their unspoken thoughts. You are the one left doing the emotional math, trying to figure out how someone can feel and still not fight for you. But let me tell you what often happens inside them, and it will shock you because it's so human and so contradictory. Part of them misses you, and part of them resents the fact that they miss you. Part of them admires your warmth, and part of them feels overwhelmed by it. Part of them wants to come closer, and part of them panics at the thought of being responsible for another person's heart. So instead of leaning in, they detach. Instead of expressing, they disappear. Instead of saying, I care, they act like they don't. And if you've ever felt like you were loving a wall, this is why, because they are not expressing from the heart, they are managing from the mind. You need to understand many avoidants don't sit there thinking, how can I hurt this person? They sit there thinking, why do I feel pressure when someone wants me? They sit there thinking, what is wrong with me that closeness makes me want to run? They sit there thinking, if I let this become real, I'll have to show up every day. And showing up every day means consistency, it means vulnerability, it means being known. And being known means risk. For you, risk is worth it because love is worth it. For them, risk can feel like danger because somewhere along the way, love taught them to protect themselves first. And that's why they can think about you more than they admit and still not come toward you, because coming toward you is not just texting, it is surrendering the control that distance gives them. Distance lets them feel connected without being accountable. Distance lets them miss you without having to repair. Distance lets them keep you as a thought, a memory, a possibility, without having to become the person who can hold you with consistency. It is safer to keep you in their mind than to meet you in real life with the courage you deserve. Now, I want to say this with tenderness because it matters. Knowing they think about you is not the same as being loved well. Someone can miss you and still mistreat you. Someone can care and still be incapable. Someone can replay your voice at night and still leave you anxious in the morning. And you need to understand, your heart cannot live on secret thoughts. Your heart needs visible effort. Your heart needs clarity. Your heart needs someone who doesn't just feel something, but chooses something. So if you're listening to this and you feel that familiar ache, that pull to keep decoding them, to keep searching for signs, to keep hoping their silence means love, I want you to bring your attention back to yourself. You need to understand their hidden thoughts do not decide your value. Their capacity does not define your worth. Your worth is not proven by being the person who can endure distance. Your worth is proven by the standards you set for how you will be loved. And one day, you will stop being shocked by what avoidants secretly think, because you will stop needing secrecy as confirmation. You will start requiring love that shows up in daylight, not love that only exists in someone's private mind. You will start choosing people who don't turn longing into logic, who don't turn emotion into disappearance, who don't make you earn basic care by surviving uncertainty. And in that moment, you won't just understand them. You will finally understand you, and that will change everything. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to understand something that may hurt before it heals, because what shocks most people is not that avoidants feel nothing, it's that they feel a lot and then shut it down. And if you have ever sat there questioning your worth, wondering how someone could look into your eyes one week and then act distant the next, I want you to hear this clearly. The shift you experienced was not proof that you were unlovable. It was often proof that the connection was becoming real, and real is what triggers fear in someone who has learned to survive through distance. You see, when things are light, casual, undefined, avoidance can breathe. There is space, there is room, there is no pressure to commit, no pressure to expose deeper layers, no pressure to promise tomorrow. In that space, they can be charming, attentive, even affectionate. But when you begin to lean in emotionally, when you start asking for clarity, when your eyes say, "I see you, and I want something real," something changes inside them. And you need to understand, it is not always rejection. Sometimes it is activation. Closeness activates memory. It activates fear. It activates old beliefs they may not even consciously recognize. Beliefs like, if I depend on someone, I will lose myself. Beliefs like, if I let someone see me fully, they will eventually leave. Beliefs like, if I commit, I will be trapped. These beliefs don't show up as obvious panic. They show up as subtle withdrawal. They show up as delayed replies. They show up as emotional numbness. They show up as logic replacing feeling. And to you, it looks like indifference. But inside them, it can feel like overwhelm. There is something deeply confusing about caring for someone and feeling suffocated at the same time. There is something deeply unsettling about wanting closeness and fearing it in the same breath. And that is the internal battle many avoidants experience. Part of them enjoys the connection. Part of them feels warmed by your presence. Part of them appreciates the way you show up consistently. But another part whispers, "This is too much," not because you are too much, but because vulnerability is too unfamiliar. You need to understand, when someone is not used to emotional safety, safety itself can feel threatening. When someone has built their identity around independence, being needed can feel like pressure. When someone has learned that emotions lead to chaos, even healthy emotions can feel overwhelming. So what do? They protect themselves. They create distance. They convince themselves that pulling back is rational. They tell themselves it's moving too fast. They tell themselves they need space. They tell themselves they are just not ready. And sometimes those statements are true, but sometimes they are fear disguised as maturity. And here's the part that will shock you. While you are interpreting their withdrawal as rejection, they are often battling internal confusion. They may think, "Why am I reacting like this?" They may think, "Why do I feel pressure when nothing bad is happening?" They may think, "This person is good to me, so why do I want to run?" They feel the connection, and that very feeling unsettles them. because closeness means responsibility. Closeness means consistency. Closeness means being accountable for someone else's heart. And accountability is not something they were trained to handle comfortably. So instead of leaning into the discomfort and growing through it, they lean away. They choose distance because distance feels manageable. Distance feels controlled. Distance allows them to miss you without having to meet you. Distance allows them to care privately while staying detached publicly. And that is why it hurts you so deeply, because you are left loving someone who may have feelings but lacks the courage to act on them consistently. You need to understand something else as well. Their fear is not your failure. Their shutdown is not a reflection of your value. You could have been softer. You could have been more patient. You could have asked for less. And it still might have triggered them, because the trigger was not your behavior. It was the depth of the connection. It was the fact that you reached a place where the relationship required emotional growth. And growth is uncomfortable for someone who survives by avoiding. And this is where your power comes back to you, because understanding their internal battle does not mean excusing their external behavior. Compassion does not require self-abandonment. Empathy does not require you to tolerate inconsistency. You can recognize that someone is afraid and still choose not to live in the shadow of their fear. You can acknowledge that they feel more than they show and still decide that you deserve someone who shows what they feel. There is a painful truth here, and you need to understand it fully. Someone can care about you deeply and still be incapable of loving you properly. Someone can feel drawn to you and still be emotionally unavailable. Someone can think about you constantly and still choose distance because it feels safer than closeness. And that reality can break your heart if you are not careful, because you may keep hoping that if you just prove your loyalty, they will finally relax and stay. But growth does not come from proof. Growth comes from willingness. And if they are not willing to confront their fear, your love will not heal it for them. You cannot love someone into emotional maturity. You cannot be patient enough to make them ready. You cannot be perfect enough to remove their triggers. Their healing is their responsibility. So when you look back at what happened, don't rewrite the story as if you were too much. Don't tell yourself that your depth scared them because it was wrong. Your depth scared them because it was real. And real love requires courage. If they did not have the courage, that does not diminish the beauty of what you offered. It simply reveals where they are in their journey. And as you move forward, let this understanding soften you without weakening you. Let it give you clarity, not confusion. Let it remind you that you deserve someone who does not shut down when things become meaningful, someone who does not translate care into distance, someone who does not fear the very intimacy you are ready to build. Because love should not feel like convincing someone to stay. Love should feel like two people brave enough to remain. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to understand something that can feel almost unbelievable. When you are the one loving with your whole heart, many avoidants secretly admire the very qualities in you that they struggle to stay close to. And that is the part that breaks people, because you look at their distance and you assume it means you weren't enough, when in reality, sometimes you were too real, too present, too emotionally alive for a nervous system that only feels safe when it has space. You need to understand, the warmth you carry is not ordinary. The way you show up, the way you care, the way you remember small details, the way you speak honestly, the way you want clarity instead of games, those are not weaknesses. Those are rare qualities, especially in a world full of half effort and half feelings. And when an avoidant meets someone like you, a strange thing can happen. They feel drawn to you because your presence offers something they don't always know how to create for themselves: emotional safety. Your consistency feels like sunlight. Your affection feels like home. Your sincerity feels like relief. And for a moment, they let themselves enjoy it. For a moment, they soften. For a moment, they act like the person you believed they could be. Then the same warmth that attracted them starts to overwhelm them, because your warmth invites closeness, and closeness invites vulnerability. And vulnerability is where their old defenses wake up. So the admiration stays, but it becomes complicated. They admire you, but they also fear what you require. They admire your emotional depth, but they panic at what it might cost them. They admire your loyalty, but they don't always know how to return it consistently. They admire the way you love, but they also feel exposed by it, because your love shines a light on their inability to stay present. You need to understand what this looks like in real life. It looks like them telling you you're special, then going quiet. It looks like them being sweet, then suddenly needing space. It looks like them showing up intensely, then pulling away the moment the relationship starts to feel defined. It looks like them complimenting your heart, then punishing you with distance when you ask for basic reassurance. And it feels cruel because you are left wondering how someone can be moved by you and still treat you like an option. But inside them, the admiration is real, and the fear is real too. Many avoidants grew up learning that emotions were inconvenient, that needs were burdens, that vulnerability led to disappointment, so they built a life around control. Control of time, control of closeness, control of how much you get to see, and you, with your openness, challenge that control without even trying. Your presence says, let's be real. Your questions say, let's be clear. Your love says, let's be close. And to someone who has survived through distance, closeness can feel like pressure, even when you are gentle, even when you are patient, even when you are kind. So here's the shocking truth. Sometimes they admire you in silence. They look at how you show up and it makes them feel something like awe. They notice your strength in the way you keep going, your softness in the way you still care, your courage in the way you express what you feel. They may even feel a quiet guilt because they know you are offering a level of love they are not matching. They can sense your sincerity, and part of them knows you deserve the same. But instead of stepping up, they sometimes retreat because stepping up would require change, and change requires facing what they have avoided for years. You need to understand, admiration does not always turn into action. Admiration can live in someone's mind without ever becoming consistency. Admiration can be real and still not be enough to build a relationship. Because a relationship doesn't survive on appreciation alone, it survives on presence. It survives on emotional responsibility. It survives on the willingness to stay in the room when things get uncomfortable. And an avoidant may admire your warmth and still lack the skills to stay close to it. This is where people get trapped, because you start thinking, if they admire me, if they're drawn to me, if they come back, if they miss me, then maybe I should keep trying. Maybe I should be more patient. Maybe I should wait for them to realize. Maybe I should love them through it. But you need to understand, being admired is not the same as being loved well. Being wanted sometimes is not the same as being chosen consistently. A person can adore your light and still refuse to build a life in it. And I want to speak directly to the part of you that has been shrinking. The part of you that has been trying to become easier so they won't disappear. The part of you that has been swallowing needs, lowering expectations, convincing yourself that you should be grateful for crumbs because at least they came back. You need to understand the right person will not be overwhelmed by your warmth in a way that makes them punish you for it. The right person will not admire you privately and neglect you publicly. The right person will not treat your love like something to visit only when they feel lonely. The right person will meet you. So yes, it will shock you to know they can admire you so deeply and still pull away. It will shock you to know they can miss you and still stay silent. It will shock you to know they can recognize your value and still not rise to the level required to love you properly. But the most important thing, the thing you need to understand, is that their admiration is not your mission. Their fear is not your responsibility. Their inability to handle closeness is not a verdict on your worth. Let your warmth stay warm. Do not let their distance turn you cold. Let your heart remain open, but let your standards become firm. Because love is not proven by how much you can endure. Love is proven by how safe you feel while you're in it. And if someone's admiration for you cannot become consistent effort, then it is not a love you should keep paying for with your peace. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to understand something that will change the way you hold your heart. Their thoughts about you do not decide your value, your standards do. And I know, that sounds simple, almost too simple, because when you are emotionally attached, your mind wants answers like oxygen. Your mind wants to know what they feel, what they think, what they meant, what they regret, what they are secretly doing when they are not choosing you openly. You want certainty because uncertainty is painful. And when someone is avoidant, uncertainty can become the entire relationship, little bursts of closeness followed by distance, brief moments of warmth followed by silence, enough attention to keep you hoping, not enough consistency to keep you safe. You need to understand what happens when you live in that pattern. Your confidence starts depending on them. Your mood begins to rise and fall based on whether they reply. Your sense of worth becomes connected to their approval, their presence, They're crumbs. You start reading signs everywhere. A like on a story becomes a sign. A late night hey becomes a sign. A short message becomes a sign. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop living inside your own life and start living inside their behavior, tracking it, analyzing it, hoping it means something more than it actually does. This is the trap, because the moment you make someone else's thoughts your measuring stick, you hand them power they did not earn. You start believing that if they miss you, you matter, and if they don't miss you, you don't. You start believing that if they regret losing you, you were valuable. And if they don't regret it, you were disposable. You start believing that if they come back, you were worthy, and if they don't, you were not. And you need to understand how unfair that is to your own heart, because it makes your worth depend on someone who struggles to show up consistently, someone who may feel things but cannot hold them, someone whose fear and avoidance have nothing to do with the beauty you bring. You need to understand, an avoidant can think about you deeply and still not choose you. An avoidant can miss you and still not change. An avoidant can admire you and still be inconsistent. An avoidant can feel love and still hide behind distance, because feelings alone do not create a relationship. What creates a relationship is behavior, presence, effort, responsibility, consistency, the ability to stay emotionally available, not just when it's easy, but when it's uncomfortable, when it requires growth, when it requires courage. So the question that will save you is not, what are they thinking about me? The question is, what am I accepting? Because you need to understand, love is not just who you choose. Love is what you allow. Love is the standard you live by. Love is the line you refuse to cross, even when your heart is aching. Love is the way you protect your peace. And when you raise your standards, something powerful happens. You stop needing their hidden world to validate you because your life becomes grounded in something stronger than their inconsistency. Standards are not punishment. Standards are not arrogance. Standards are not you being cold. Standards are simply the rules of entry to your heart. They are you saying, if you want access to me, you must bring respect. If you want closeness with me, you must bring consistency. If you want my softness, you must handle it with care. And the reason this matters is because avoidants often respond to access. When access is unlimited, there is no urgency to grow. When access is always available, there is no consequence for distance. When access comes with no expectation, the avoidant can keep the relationship in a comfortable gray zone. But when you have standards, the gray zone disappears. And you need to understand this is the moment things become clear, not because they suddenly transform, but because the truth can no longer hide. Because an avoidant might say beautiful things. They might send emotional messages at night. They might tell you they miss you. They might say you're special. They might promise change. But your standards teach you to watch what happens next. Do they show up consistently, or do they disappear again? Do they communicate when it's hard, or do they go silent? Do they repair after conflict, or do they avoid it? Do they meet your needs with care, or do they minimize them? And the painful truth you need to understand is this: you can't build a life on potential. You can't build safety on promises. You can't build peace on words that vanish when reality arrives. So when you feel yourself spiraling, when you feel yourself craving answers, when you feel yourself checking for signs, I want you to come back to the one thing you can control, your standard. You need to understand your standard is your self-respect in action. It is you refusing to romanticize inconsistency. It is you refusing to confuse longing with love. It is you refusing to call anxiety chemistry. It is you refusing to keep proving your worth to someone who keeps making you audition for basic care. And there is a reason this feels emotional, because it is. It means you finally stop seeking permission to be valued. It means you stop asking someone who struggles with closeness to define your lovability. It means you stop shrinking yourself to keep a connection. It means you let the truth hurt you once instead of letting the pattern hurt you 1,000 times. It means you choose the kind of love that doesn't leave you guessing, the kind of love that does not require you to become smaller, quieter, less human, to be kept, You need to understand the goal is not to make them realize. The goal is not to make them regret. The goal is not to make them shocked. The goal is to protect your heart so well that you stop needing their secret thoughts as confirmation. Because the right person will not keep you in a state of decoding. The right person will not make you earn consistency by surviving confusion. The right person will show you clearly in daylight, not in hints, not in half effort, not in late-night nostalgia, but in steady presence. And when you live from that place, your life becomes calmer. Your love becomes healthier. Your heart becomes safer in your own hands. And that is the moment you stop asking what they think because you finally know what you deserve.